Good morning, everyone who is watching us from wherever you are watching on media platforms. Welcome you back to this program of Pan-African Friday that comes your way every Friday from the studios of UBC here on Nile Avenue in Kampala. Apparently today, Kampala has been a bit chilly. You would definitely think if you lived elsewhere that we are beginning the winter, but it has been drizzling, not that heavy raining. But it has been a bit nice for if you are not in it. Of course, last week we were not here because we were expecting a live broadcast coming your way from Parliament of Uganda. As you may be aware that we had the Commonwealth Parliamentary group that was here, and of course Kampala today up to now is a beehive of activities. The whole of last week we had members of Parliament and the speakers of the Commonwealth Parliament who were here in Kampala. We are now expecting to have the NAM delegates arriving. Of course, advanced teams are already here. At the same time, we are also expecting to host the IGAD heads of government in Kampala. So Kampala apparently is definitely a beehive of activities, but that is Uganda. Today we also try to look at what does this NAM mean, the non-aligned movement. What does it mean to Africans? What does it mean to you as an individual? What does it mean to me? Does it make any sense to us today as it were when it was initiated? Does it still hold the same significance or even better today than it was found a number of years ago after the Cold War? So these are some of the issues that we'll be looking at, but also we'll be looking at in the history of the events, how they have come to be to today. So these are some of the issues that we'll be looking at today in the studio with my sister Rachel Takali, who will be taking us through all this. And before we come to that, of course, like I was saying, Rachel, the Kampala is hyped. Of course, I think we are missing a bit on the hype that we had for the CHOGM of 2007 compared to what is happening here. We have a compact of activities. You have just gone off the parliamentary, the Commonwealth Parliament. You are now having IGAD, and you are having the NAM. But the hype that we had during the CHOGM, or maybe because of the Queen, because she had that valor around her whenever she would go. I think we are not to that level.
This is very true. But among other reasons, aside from, of course, the PR machine of the British government, it cannot be underestimated. That aside, the financing, in my estimation, is significantly lower. The Commonwealth meetings have quite a bit from the British government. But I think it's also one way of underlining
surprising, like you are saying, even the British government was not involved. We didn't have many people coming from there.
For the Commonwealth meeting.
Exactly.
They did boycott it, the parliamentary meeting.
Yeah.
They said they could not see eye to eye on some critical issues. So the Speaker herself, Honorable Among, says they stayed away, which is very interesting. But I think what really irritated her was, having stayed away, they wanted to host the next Commonwealth Speakers and Presiding Officers Conference. And she said no.
That's the irony.
It doesn't make sense. So they said the only people they would consider were those who were on hand. And so India will be the next host. You were talking about why the hype is not what it could be. I think it also speaks to the fact that issues where the West has a special interest are treated differently. Remember that it has been made clear that this group of nations, NAM and of course G77, are trying to chart their own course. It's understandable that there must be quite a bit of unhappiness in important capitals across the world. It follows also that this grouping does not have the resource base of the other grouping, the global north they talk about. And so I think it speaks to the practical nature of things going forward. Spending a lot of money in publicity, for example, there are many people in this country who say they have not heard that much about NAM, that they don't expect to understand the concept in the near future. But I think when it starts on such a note, it lets us know that going forward, these countries want to do or to have a special focus on those things that catapult them into the future. Because when you have a lot of new buildings, and these are things that can be done, because of course this meeting is not a new revelation. It has been on the cards for some years now. So there are many things you could do: construct new roads, have railways in preparation for this sort of thing. But I think in this grouping, there is an understanding that the monies that they have as a resource base must not be abused. We can do something that is reasonable, but not to break budgets in the name of 1 week of activity. I think it doesn't make sense. To me, I think that is one of the reasons why you're talking about it seems more understated. I'm thinking they're saving all their energy and resources for the bigger picture, the meeting of minds. Of course, they have a number of meetings, among them ambassadorial level, ministerial level, and of course they have also the presidential level. But these meetings are very much about self-reflection. You see, this is not a new organization. It's been around for decades and decades. But I think everybody realizes that unless serious effort is undertaken to revive the hopes of the founding fathers, the world beyond this gathering will not be any more friendly than it is as we talk.
Yeah, because I think going back straight to that, you realize that even the basic reason as to why NAM, the non-aligned movement, came into force was of course you'd think it was a cowardly decision. People are saying, for us, we don't want to belong to any group of the two after the Cold War. And you have, when the Warsaw group says, for us, we're aligning with Russia. And then the NATO group also says, we are aligning with America. Then the global south now, the African, Asian, and a few other Americas are saying, for us, we don't want to belong to this group. And because also it comes at the foot the heels of the Korean War, after again Russia and China supporting the North, and America and its other allies supporting the South. So I think in the context of trying to avoid wars, these people wanted to be a bit not actually independent, but I think wanted to stay out of the conflict, which definitely will not work. Because at some point you realize that they have, the global south has brought, north has brought more wars to the south than the other way around. So I think that movement could have been strong from day one if these guys sat down and said, for us, our decision is that we are not going to participate in these people's wars. Than saying we are not aligning with one of them, but internally we are definitely aligning with them. So I think maybe that's partly the problem why that the South has not come up with a strong position on any of the global issues, even as these two groups were fighting, I think up to date. So I think Africa also needs to have a position so that we decide of what we know is good for Africa, and also that we can be able to sell to the rest of the world. Otherwise, being unaligned is good, but then what are we aiming at?
It is very true that in many places across the world, there is an understanding that he who pays the piper.
Exactly.
will determine the tune. You cannot think of a way forward that does not include significant resources. In fact, one of the things that intrigues me is the structure of NAM. I don't know, going forward, how they'll get people around these grand ideals without a secretariat, without a constitution, without a headquarters.
Because we are not aligned. We come in us and when.
Actually, there's a new term that they say is strategic neutrality.
Exactly, yeah.
And this one, they are very insistent. It is not the same as having no interests. They are ditching the neutrality of the 50s. In the new era, you cannot afford to be neutral. However, they are saying that we live in a different world, a multipolar arrangement.
Exactly.
The bipolar situation is something that has not helped us very much. We know for a fact, I'll give you an example. While America and its brothers were insistent that many countries of the world must vote against Russia in the UN, saying they invaded Ukraine. To this day, America continues to use the vessels of Russia to take its crew to space.
The space, yes.
So you wonder, where do they meet? To this day. They say many arrangements have fallen by the wayside, but the space station, they're still working hand in glove with Russia. So if I say for my own good, I need to engage Russia, that is a crime. But when America selects and says, okay, on oil, no Russia. On arms, no Russia. On space, yes, Russia. There is a realization that this arrangement cannot deliver what the founding fathers had in mind. So I think also one of the reasons why, in my view, this particular meeting seems more low-key, I think there is deep reflection. Since '55, when this idea was first raised, and then of course the first formal engagement in '61, everybody is wondering how much ground has been covered. And if that ground has been covered, is that enough? Because you mentioned earlier that one of the key things was neutrality. Another
Yes.
one was decolonization.
Yeah.
And decolonization, by the 80s, it was largely complete, the decolonization process. Thereafter, the NAM situation almost went underground because there was no more forum for advocating vigorously for the exit of the French and the Germans and others. So everybody began to wonder, is this arrangement still relevant? Today, after the silence, almost near silence, of the 90s and 2000s, there is a realization that the things that were talked about all those years ago are still as critical as they were in the beginning.
Yeah, exactly.
Among them, sovereignty, of course. I'll give you an example of what is happening in the Sahel. We know that the people of that region have, in recent months, taken to throwing out elected governments and saying that those governments have been very closely aligned with their colonizers of old.
Exactly.
But
in fact,
to date,
many of those countries, I'm sure, are not going to attend to NAM because they fear what could be at home.
well, but the interesting thing is that those people, to this day, you know, France is still extracting
The
uranium.
resources, exactly.
So just because you say, I don't want you on the streets of Abidjan, that is just an example, or on the streets of Lomé, does not mean that these people have retreated from your economy. So Ambassador Yebare was saying that one of the things that will be focused on will be this issue of increasing the domestic base in terms of revenue. You cannot lean on people who are not going in the same direction.
But again, you raised that one as a very important issue. When you look at NAM, about 120 countries plus, and when you look at the trading within these countries, it's very minimal. The collaboration in terms of military, in terms of education, in terms of all these other sectors is very minimal. And then then you wonder what is, because this is a very big resource, and if NAM countries put themselves together, they will be the biggest club after UN. So this is a very big resource that can be utilized in terms of collaboration and even the protection of their interests. Of course, there are countries like Cuba that have voted consistently with the NAM bloc. But you see some of these countries that are very, you have been talking about countries like South Africa, like Kenya, whose alliances you cannot trust when it comes to global issues. And yet, these are the same countries that are within the NAM, except one country in Africa, which is also very notorious for its own decisions. But can't we make use of these numbers to push for the interest of the global south?
I'm thinking that one of the reasons for this particular situation is that African nations that make up the majority, of course, in the NAM arrangement, have been very timid. They have been afraid to fight for their space. They have been apologetic for their existence. They have not been sure-footed. They have not made their stand clear as a group. Now, this sort of thing cannot allow a grouping to go to the next level. I'm thinking maybe even the name needs to change as we talk. Because non-alignment does not work. It doesn't work.
Next to non-existent.
It doesn't work. Because who are you? What do you represent? You cannot say you're strategically neutral unless you change the definition of neutral.
Even the aspirations.
So, why are these nations being timid about the space that they must occupy? Because if there is no attempt to up the game in terms of synergies, I'm afraid we'll continue to meet as groupings for the foreseeable future and nothing to show for it. Because aside from the push to disengage the colonizers from many of these nations,
yes,
what else do we have on our side? We know very well that political power without economic emancipation is a fallacy. You cannot say, I am fully in charge of my governance issues when another piper is paying the bills.
Yes, because
it doesn't work.
Talking of which, you now realize that one of the basics, the reasons as to why this grouping is formed is that they have to stand against colonialism, imperialism, neocolonialism.
Okay.
But until now, you remember and you know, you are aware that there are countries in West Africa that are still paying the colonial tax.
True.
To someone.
Not the past one, but even exactly. Present day.
Yeah.
Because there are different taxes. When you have certain investment regimes, for example, some that I will not specify, where you say you can make all your money here and repatriate all the benefits. Really? Do you expect to make headway in the short term? But it's because the terms economic and financial are so horrible that you make all sorts of concessions, many of them not in your interest. Because there is no one who would enter that arrangement and think that the lives of their people who are employed by these factories, who are employed by these financial centers, will make a meaningful improvement in terms of welfare and so on. When this guy, the investor, is giving miserable wages and taking all the benefits, the profits, back to where they came from. But that kind of situation cannot improve unless the whole arrangement is redone. Lately, we have the most important big brothers. There is India and there is China. But I think everybody realizes that they don't come just to be nice. I hope they realize. They have their vested interest in this matter.
Yeah.
So the question becomes, if you want to disentangle from the straps of the former master, what are you doing to protect yourself in the eyes of an aspiring master? Because there is no one who invests where they don't expect a return on investment. I am saying all this to say that I expect serious reflection and a revisiting of things as they stand. I am saying, if you need a consensus concerning how the financial arrangements will be undertaken going forward, how climate change issues will be handled, how governance matters will be talked about, how the youth, the youth dividend will actually add to the equation. How do you do that without a specific place where you meet in between these grand meetings?
Maybe it is also possible, when you look at it in length, that other than coming together because of the geographical relationship that we find ourselves in the south, and also the other issue that all these countries are developing countries. Of course, over time, some of them have developed beyond the current scope of developing countries, one may say. But also, when you come to look at it, are we still at the same level with Yugoslavia, for example? Are we having anything in common? And by the way, after President Tito died, do we still have a strong connection
the
with
sympathy? Not really.
Yeah, exactly.
Not really.
You look at Egypt, of course, when NASA, the founding partners of the kinds of NASA, the Nehru, the Tito, and others, what they looked at under this conference of NAM, do we still have a lot of commonality with what we have? Because the challenges have remained, that have increased more than then. Because as we speak, the Warsaw group and the NATO group are still on loggerheads. And somehow we, the Global South, are involved indirectly also, or directly. Now, this is what the Nehrus and others, the NASAs, wanted to avoid. But I think that was not going to be possible, because at one point you have to get named. You have to have a side, and we have had this happen much as we have tried to be as neutral as possible in pretense. But other than this, can't this big, having the population of half the population of the world,
and a significant GDP.
Exactly. And you cannot make use of it.
I am thinking that these synergies that we talked about have really not come together. It is a meeting that is good to the ear, but when will we go beyond the good feeling of the hour? Because health and education issues and human development indices and other things are not meaningfully addressed in 7 days or in 8 days. So when will a decision be made to have formal and permanent organs? You see, you know the United Nations Secretary General is on his way here.
Yeah, it's coming.
You know the President of the General Assembly is on his way here.
Yeah.
And you know...
The African Union is also, as usual,
well,
escorting.
And you know that having those two officials in the same space is not an ordinary situation. But you see, NAM from the very beginning to today has always been in the space of the United Nations, in the little cocoon. But it is not a tenable arrangement.
Actually, one of the discussions that are going to be in Kampala for NAM is the reformation of the UN.
True. That is why these guys are rushing to this, because for them, they don't take anything for granted. They want to be there to ensure that history is not significantly rewritten. Because if you're talking about, I'll give you an example. One of the things that has been proposed in the case of Ukraine, or in the case of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. There are people who say there is an arrangement that is rarely used in the United Nations, but maybe it is time to bring that arrangement to life. That arrangement was most famously taken on by the United States back in the late 50s. Because at that time, Britain and France decided to attack Egypt over the Suez Canal, because they believed that their goods and cargo would be kept from crossing this waterway. The United States was so bitter because these particular people had not notified them. You know, they're the big brother. The United States, knowing that Britain and France are on the Security Council, knew that it would be impossible to secure their support to stop, because these were the perpetrators of this aggression.
Exactly.
So it bypassed the Security Council and went to the General Assembly and took that issue to the General Assembly and said, look, we have an issue. These guys have jumped on a member nation of the UN, do something. What we are saying is that a redoing of these issues, for example, the Israeli-Palestinian
conflict.
Yes. We know it is the same big powers that are keeping Israel in a posture that South Africa is protesting. You know South Africa is going to court.
Yeah. But they also have many skeletons in the...
Oh, well, that's a different matter. You see, hypocrisy is the name of the game.
Exactly.
In fact, Israel has called them hypocrites. But the issue is, when the big powers offend other nations, and they are the ones in all the Security Council slots, where does one get justice? That is why these voices have been increasing. Say, but really, it is shameful. How can India, that has over 1 billion people, not be on that council? Really? For whom are you now talking? France, with its little population, maybe about 60. UK is in the same groove. Even Nigeria has a bigger population than those two.
Exactly.
Ethiopia has a bigger population. Egypt has a bigger population.
We're even talking about only Africa, let alone these ones.
So we are saying that these voices have been rising, that saying that this non-alignment thing cannot deliver us to the promised land. We must, there are voices that say, we must tackle the financial system. The so-called Brentwood institutions, they have this double-faced lending mechanism where you borrow the same as another member state and they charge you prohibitive interest. But you cannot do that without a collective voice. I am hoping that this time around, after the Kampala meeting, there will be substantial movement on concretizing these things that have been gathering dust 50, 60, nearly 70 years? No.
Yeah, because even as that happens, given the experience that the Speaker of Parliament was complaining about, there are also voices, and I think they are being heard, that who are also mobilizing that the Kampala meeting should not even be successful. There are also those who think that, you know, a person points a finger, say, where are you going? Say, I would not expect you to be in Kampala. And that invisible hand is also very strong. So it will not be surprising to see even some of the African leaders not coming to Kampala, because that means that one was saying that if I do that, maybe I will undermine these efforts. But naive as we are, Africans, I mean, we can also end up yielding to that pressure. But knowing that what is happening, and has been a common experience, to one of us will also happen to another.
True.
Today they were going to influence you against the other, then tomorrow they're also going to influence others against you. And that's the hypocrisy we're talking about of Africa, and the pretense also needs to be, I think, addressed. Because if we do not do that, then Africa will continue lagging behind, but also that even beyond Africa, some of these alliances that are not moving us forward, that are not yielding results. Because NATO, for example, when they sit down, they take decisions, and those decisions are binding. And they will point a finger, say, if you do this, we're going to do that. Of course, I know they're not also very strong, but at least there's a voice, and there's their efforts towards keeping what they are saying and standing with their promise. Africa, I think, and these countries under the NAM, most of them being developing countries, like we said, there is that the commercial part of it, how funding, we are the ones funding your budgets, but also the political group, that if you don't do this tomorrow, you know, but also the economic, the hegemony. People are saying, if you are not going to yield this, we are not also going to sponsor this. So I think some of these are the issues that have crippled the NAM from progressing that fast. But I think they're all indicators that this group, if they become solid, they can be a force to reckon with.
It is very true. I think it is a little sad in terms of the founding nations. In my view, they have lost some ground in terms of moral authority on some of these issues. You were talking about Yugoslavia. That is, it used to be Czechoslovakia. But since Tito left, President Tito at the time, we cannot say that we have made any headway in terms of maintaining the ideals that Tito represented.
Sure. In
the eyes of the people of the country. I'm thinking it is that structural weakness that is also reflected in other places, such as Ghana. We cannot say that Ghana still has the posture and the leadership of Kwame Nkrumah. We cannot also say that Indonesia is in the same place
as
in those that they were in those days. We cannot also say that Egypt is still in the same space as in the days of Nasser. The thinking in those places has diverged. It has really taken a different direction. So we are thinking, or that the thinking is, this whole thing needs to be rebooted. Because even the base that you had is no longer there.
Exactly.
In Egypt, I'm sure if you talked about NAM, everybody would be wondering, what is the big deal? But that should not be. One of the things that we often talk about here is that there is a difference in approach between the global south to matters of their special interest and the global north. The global north is consistent. Whether it is Biden in office, whether it is Clinton, whether it is Carter or Ford or Eisenhower, their interests are rock solid. When will we get to a place when there is no ambiguity concerning where we stand? When will we get to a place when there are no reservations concerning pushing what is good for us?
For a common good.
That is really the question of the hour.
When we come back after the break, we are going to look at all this, if we are able, as Africans, of course, and the Global South altogether, to be able to push for what is good for us and what the commonalities, if we have anything in terms of politics, in terms of economics, in terms of all these social dimensions. But shortly, we'll be back after this break, so please don't go away.
irritations? No more rashes and irritations. Movit Herbal Jelly and Herbal Soap is rich in natural herbs for a smooth and glowing skin.
Movit all day confidence.
Junko.
Yo.
Wachiko. Check the shopping, man. What's your secret?
Haven't you heard of the Parish Development Model PDM?
Yes, I did, but I thought it was just a talk.
No, Sebatia. It is real. I and a few friends together formed a circle, accessed money from the PDM, invested in a poultry project, and now things are moving.
Junko. I thought I was one of your friends.
You are.
But you left me behind.
I didn't leave you in poverty. What you do, just visit your LC2 chairperson and your parish chief and start the process of economic transformation. Just like that. The Parish Development Model is an initiative from the government of Uganda through the Ministry of Local Government designed to transform all lives of Ugandans for the better. PDM, my parish, my development, my life.
Buli munyayuganda nayetenga amakulu marungi. UBC West erina amakulu marungi kandi agali kwesigwa. Leero za program zaayo ziri omulunya kitara hamwe n'olufumbira. UBC West erina tekinologiya ey'omulembe eri kugibaasisa kuhika omu bicweka byona omu ihanga nangu n'aheeru y'eihanga. Tukwatire aha frequencies Kisoro, chena na mushanju, katunize mushanju fama. Kabari, chena nishatu katunize mushanju fama. Hoima, chena na mwenda katunize mwe fama. Kampala, igane itano katunize mushanju fama. Mbarara, chena na mushanju katunize ina fama. Futpoto, chena na mnana katunize munana fama. Masindi, igane itano fama. Kurikiriza UBC West ohurire mbaganiza. UBC West empika huna
107.3 Kampala, 96.9 Mbale, 95.7 Jinja, 98.6 Soroti. You are all covered.
UBC Mutego UBC Mutego.
An amazing Off the Hook youth program brings you an array of fun, exciting, and educative segments you do not want to miss. From red carpet moments to proms, youth empowerment programs to youth gig vibes, and so much more, Teens Crown will get you hooked. Only on UBC TV every Saturday at 1:30 p.m. Don't miss.
The Property Line, everything real estate, construction, class, and luxury.
Real estate, it's land and developments on land.
We are now, as a country, in an auto-drive mode with respect to real estate.
We have a deficit in housing of more than 2 million units.
For the real estate, when you have income, I want you to contribute something.
Don't miss The Property Line every Saturday 7:30 p.m. and Monday 11 a.m. only on UBC TV. Inspiring Uganda.
This is Chilling. Don't miss a brand new season of Chilling on UBC TV.
Yeah, welcome back from that short break, and welcome back to this program of Pan-African Friday, program that comes your way from UBC studios here on Nile Avenue in Kampala. The issue looks at issues of interest to the African people, the African population, both here at home and those living outside of this great continent of Africa. By the time we left for the break, we were looking at the relevance of NAM membership, people coming together, half, more than actually, relatively, more than half, because it's about 55% of the world population are under this arrangement of NAM. Now, you realize NAM, like we said at the beginning, the countries under NAM are the biggest next to the UN globally. But what does this coming together mean to the people, especially of Africa? Because again, Africa is the majority, has majority membership under NAM. But like we were also observing that the basic essence of these countries coming together were to ensure that there is no more aggression among its members, oppression, colonialism, neocolonialism. But we have seen these things happen even over the years now. And does that mean, is it because that, and you don't hear a voice coming out from NAM saying we have issues now, especially in Africa, in Sudan. We're having issues in many other countries in the Sahel, in the western part of Africa, the northern part of Africa, Libya, and many other countries. But you rarely hear a voice coming like the NAM is saying this and that. Like we have always said about Rugarama's dog or no dog, that this no dog or dog or sleeping dog has no voice. But these are the basics upon which our relationship came together. We went to church, for example, and we took vows that in sickness and in wealth, in the richness, we shall be together. But now, the sickness has come and you are not responsive. Do we still need this relationship anyway?
Remember, they have a key focus, which is non-interference.
Yeah, but it makes
over
sense.
The nations.
It makes sense because it does not make a lot of sense, because if you are saying you are going to have non-interference and a member is being beaten.
I said before that I really don't see this arrangement delivering the kind of fruits that the founding fathers had in mind. You can't say, for example, in the case of Rwanda, when there was that genocide, then you say, no, as NAM, we are bound, we cannot enter such an arena. Then those are the very things that Congo is accusing the UN of doing. Those are the very things that Mali is accusing the UN of, and Niger. They say, look, we know you're here, We see your cars, we see your planes, we see your officials, but zero impact. So really, unless NAM moves speedily to retake its position on the global stage, it may slide the way of UN peacekeeping troops. Of course, there are in many other situations. But the United Nations cannot be accused of being vague about where they stand on anything. You cannot hope to be the guiding light in a given generation without clarity. We said that among the founding fathers or the founding nations was India.
Yes.
Now India has evolved on many fronts, including being able to do some things in space. They have gotten to that level. By the way, it's even a nuclear power. So if you're dealing with a nuclear power that can also do some things in space, that can also field millions of workers in any situation that they need to move significantly on, you asked, what do we still have in common? It is the moment these commonalities disappear, that is when oppression begins.
Yeah, sure.
Because nature abhors a vacuum.
Yeah, because then, if we said when in Kampala the conference is going to be talking about the African, the UN, reviewing the UN, looking at how the UN can be more relevant and address issues affecting members, especially on the continent of Africa, but also the other global south, which feel marginalized within the UN. I think there's also then the need to review the NAM arrangement.
Well, very much so.
That we need to have structures.
We have over these big powers.
Yes.
Okay, no, China is not part of this, but China is part of the other, the
Yes,
G77.
the G77.
So how are you going to keep the big powers from swallowing you?
One by one.
Yes. And what happens, it begins to be a case of only the agenda of the big powers is heard, because they have the resources, they have the know-how, they have the staying power to individually propagate their issues. So if your glue that binds lesser powers is nothing to write home about, your next oppressor will not be America, it will be China and India. It's a natural progression. It's a natural progression because he who pays the piper
says the tune.
Calls the tune.
Now, that of course becomes a problem in a way that we have to take all these conferences and all these resources at the time, sit and talk. But unless those concrete decisions are laid down and are taken serious by the members, like you're saying, we are looking at the founders of, they may not be the founders, but the initiators of NAM. We are talking about Egypt, we are talking about India, we are talking about Yugoslavia. Of course, there were other countries in Africa that later on came on board.
Indonesia and Ghana.
Indonesia, Ghana. Now, when you look at these countries, for example, is anything common about the rest of Africa and Egypt? Is there anything common about Egypt and Indonesia? Is there anything common about, say, India and Yugoslavia? And I think these are some of the issues that we also need to look at and say, maybe this convenience was brought in by the leaders then. These leaders could have had relationships on an individual basis. Maybe Nasser and Nehru had relationships. Maybe Tito and Nehru or Ghana had.
It never assumed national importance.
Yes, but as when it comes now to the departure of the Titos and the Nassers and the Nehrus, and then the other people coming in, the younger generation seem not to know anything about that. Of course, there's a lot in history that people can follow, but the commitment with which you follow it, if it does not exist in your aspirations, may be different.
And I think one of the things that are important to note at this time is for these big meetings to have come to Kampala at this time. We know that there are many things that could be said, but I don't think anyone can argue with the Pan-African credentials of President Museveni. He has tried very hard to do some things that were reflective of an era gone by, where you see that your neighbor may actually be consumed by violence from another community, and you commit boots to the ground. So I'm thinking it is a recognition that leadership of the countries involved, who still have a very direct line to the ideals that started, is a dying species.
Exactly.
There is a realization that someone has to hook onto someone who has some kind of institutional memory. Of course, he was not a president at the time, but he was old enough to appreciate some things. And some of those things he has put into practice. We were talking about this business of sovereignty, this business of, there are a number of other things.
Yeah, aggression and the rest.
When we are talking about economic partnerships, those were things that were also started way back. The East African community, you know, it's a big thing. Other things, IGAD, which is coming to town soon. But I think it's a realization that there is a need to tap into a flow that agrees with where this thing started.
And you know, when these things happen, sometimes we take them lightly. But you remember that when you look again on the African continent, one of the leaders who could also fit in President Museveni's credentials was President Mugabe. But you know how he was demonized by those people who thought he was being a problem.
Including some confused African states.
Exactly, apparently. And what pains you is to see that the Africans could join. We're not saying Mugabe was a saint of all sorts, but there are certain things that we need to appreciate about ourselves. Because you are not going to get any person from some continent on Mars to come and implant here. Of course, for those who are doing that,
or to dispossess entire populations of all land and give it to a handful of newcomers.
So you realize that maybe the kinds of those people with the feelings and aspirations that feeds into the Nehrus and the Titos are no longer there. Again, we were this at one time we talked about when Gaddafi was being attacked, when Tripoli was under fire of again France and America. We said the President Museveni called Zuma, said, "Hey, my brother, things are not good. What do we do?" But Zuma has already cut a deal
in back rooms.
Exactly. And of course, there were African leaders who were trying to move to stop that which turned out to be a genocide also, but they were told, go back. But these are presidents, you see, from Africa. Again, Professor Lumumba was talking about the respect. That for Africans, we need respect and we must be respected. But no one is going to say now you are respected. You have to
bring
work
nothing
for it.
to the table. Nobody does that.
Yes, you're either going to do it by force, violently, you are going to do it diplomatically, or you are going to do it by sanctions. Now, if you are not going to be to go to that extent through all of these groupings to be able to achieve this, then who are we and what are we?
I think one of the meetings that is scheduled at some point is what they call the meeting of the future, or the conference of the future, something like that. And it seeks to create a sustainable future for this organization. Because we cannot still be talking about decolonization when it's no longer an issue. We still cannot be propagating neutrality. That doesn't work.
No, you can't be neutral.
So the question becomes, when you have a set of new actors, what will capture their imagination? You see, these are selling points. This is really salesmanship. Why would I want to be part of your grouping? There are many groupings in this world, you know. AU is a grouping. There are many groupings.
You have now the Gs that have taken on that, the G5,
then there's G20. There are many groups. So the question becomes, why would I lend my weight to this one? If I can see results after meeting so and so, and meeting X, Y, and Z, I came away with maybe $1 million to fix my roads. After this other meeting, I came away with 500,000 for my health needs. Here, I've only been reaping words. There really is a need. You see, it is easy to criticize the white man from morning to sunset. But someone said, you can't argue with results. You may not like them. They may not be your cup of tea. But they have perfected some things that we need to adopt our very selves. Why is it that for them, from generation to generation, the values are the same? They invest heavily in making sure that is the case. It is not accidental. We talked about from the 50s and the 60s, when colonization or decolonization was a big issue. NAM was at the top of the heap of international voices. Then the decline in the number of countries that were still in that situation. When it went down drastically, so did NAM. For a decade or two, there was nothing going on really. Have they finally found their feet? If you have found your feet, which ones are those ones? Because the other feet are not working. They belong to another era. How futuristic can we be? And in this Kampala meeting, we are hoping that these things will come to life. Where and when can we join financial resources? And like I said, I don't know how that will happen without a meeting place.
Sure.
A designated meeting place. The only place I know where you can meet for sure is every 3 years. This one, the next one will be 3 years from now. In between, what are you doing? Running from capital to capital is not tenable. I'm thinking there has to be an agreement that this arrangement needs to be taken to the next level.
Yes, and to be able to sustain that, you need structures, for example, that for the next 3 years also, we are not going to be meeting. But as we are not going to be meeting, what will be happening? So that by the time we come to the next capital...
In India?
Yes, we have seen this has been achieved, this has been achieved.
Climate issues,
exactly.
We now have one voice.
Exactly.
These financial arrangements, the World Bank and its cousins, we have one voice. You're talking about drawing rights, you're talking about voting in the UN, we now have a common position. You know, it is not yesterday that people started talking about reforming the UN.
Exactly.
For how long will you talk? This is a time for results. Because when an entity is 65 years old, you're not in your infancy.
Can we also cause a bluff like the African continent and we say, if we don't have two positions, or even one, on the Security Council, we're boycotting.
But that comes out of a meeting of the minds. It can't be accidental. Because we've seen until this time that the positions are fractured. The positions are sometimes illogical even.
Yeah, exactly. That's what
they're illogical because why would you agree to disenfranchise your neighbor in the interest of upping your colonial arrangement? That is illogical. Because remember, this colonial arrangement is for another man's good. Why don't you spend all your time boosting arrangements that are nearer home? For example, you know very well, just the other day, and these are NAM countries, someone got up and closed the border, so they say.
And actually on that one I was laughing. One was saying, it's very saddened and disappointed and surprised that one can close up a border. I'm like, maybe you are not the right voice.
But it is not the first time this has happened.
Exactly.
I mean, NAM, if it was more relevant, I'm thinking some of these issues would be in the halls of NAM.
Exactly. The Secretariat
seeking a resolution.
Exactly.
Because many of these arrangements, AU among them, came after the concept of NAM.
Yes. Can't we have a NAM assembly?
To sit down,
Secretariat.
this country, and to compare notes and say, look, nobody does this. Because when you close the border, it is not just you and a fellow president. There are communities along there.
Yeah.
This costs lives. Because there are many people, you know, border communities. You sometimes go across to attend school. You go across for healthcare. You go across for... So it may even cost lives. Women who can no longer deliver across the border.
Yes.
So just even explaining that this one country says this other one has been sponsoring insurgent groups. That's what they say. Okay. If that is the case, where is that entity that has sufficient moral authority to prevail over these parties? Because if NAM does not get to that place, it will not have any relevance in the near future. Because, you know, EU is relevant to the people of Europe because they can bite. They can say, look, all the subsidies that were coming to Poland, agriculture related, we are withholding those. And you know it's a lot of money.
Exactly.
So because you're not willing to have that loss, you shape up. So my question would become, what is it in this NAM arrangement that will compel the members to observe their virtues? What is it? Is it a lot of investment that goes to all of them? What is it? There has to be a selling point.
Exactly. In a relationship, there must be some benefits.
True. What are they?
But if we are no longer having benefits in this marriage, then can we talk of it as a marriage still, or it is something of convenience? That when we are going to church, we go together, we are going to a function, we go together, we come back, everyone goes their way. But also looking at it in a more elaborate way, when you look at these countries of the NAM countries, if you can have them on screen, you see that most of them have the common problems of issues of disease, issues of poverty, issues of governance,
security.
All these problems are within...
Now climate change.
Exactly. Are within this corridor of the membership of NAM, the Global South. And of course, a few of the other parts, as you look at them, those the NAM countries in those heavy colors, you realize that most of these countries have issues when you look at them. Each of them, you mention any of them, and there are issues there. Because are these issues being generated from the top, the gray areas that are being pushed? Because the good thing is that most of these countries in the NAM countries, in the NAM membership, are countries with natural resources, apparently.
True.
There are countries with good climate.
True.
There are countries with enough food. And the countries with enough problems.
Well, okay.
So then it means that if these countries, the NAM membership, came together and decided on any of the issues that affect these countries, that affects this globe, they will be able to achieve it. Because at least on the basis of the resources that they own. But the few cousins in the northern part are not going to allow that. Because when you look at the countries in the north, the northern part of the countries, that is the Warsaw Pact and the NATO, they are not as many, and they are not as
the population is not anywhere.
The population is not even there. But also, first of all, the population is dwindling. But also, the natural resources are not as much. And when you look at their incomes are not as much, they are relying mainly on the south to power the north.
True. And how do they actually continue to benefit? Is because of this disunity, unrelenting disunity. Because if today we agree that, look, we must start a discussion with this World Bank, these arrangements are not working. And then tomorrow, IMF meets you in the corridor, but we said we were going this way. How come you went that way? Those sorts of someone said it's self-hate.
Exactly.
Where you really don't spend your energy on what benefits you. Because if you cut deals at the expense of your neighbor, remember he's your neighbor. These are the things that they talk about and say, look, if you're in a neighborhood of insecurity, you cannot hope to escape the refugee situation.
Yes.
So, if on account of cutting deals, there is insecurity in your neighbor's house, by the time they send you refugees, you spend disproportionately to sustain them.
Yeah.
But when the other person is telling you to start war on your neighbor because they have brought a few shillings, you're not thinking of the repercussions of that betrayal. So we are saying these countries have had a long, long time to meditate on the disadvantages of having close partnerships with people who are very far. You are talking about how come your trade dealings with your neighbors are funny. That is crazy. You're going to spend all your time sending cargo at prohibitive costs and in small quantities. No, we're talking about AGOA. AGOA for Uganda, I think it's a little over 100 million, maybe 200 in returns for sending. But how much is sent to Kenya? And how much is gotten from DR Congo, South Sudan? I'm thinking it's a lot more than that. So why do we spend a lot of energy globe-trotting to secure minuscule markets? I'm not saying those markets are not important, but in the short term, you cannot gather sufficient steam to make a difference.
And of course, whoever is giving you that market knows that.
And then by the time they erect the barriers called standards, they say, I mean, the standards are almost demonic.
At least demonic will be an underword. Well,
Someone will tell you.
Let me tell you this.
No, let me bring this one. Someone will tell you to bring your beef to my country. EU and America, of course, are the most notorious. We must have a history of this cow. This cow, we must know who the father and the grandmother and the uncle of this cow is for you to enter my market. And they are serious.
I was going to tell you, the other time I was told that when you are going to have bananas in the Bogoya, the type, of course they have bananas from these other countries, the Asian tigers and the Brazil, they call bananas which you tasted them when you...
they are pepper-like in taste.
I know. But when you want to take their Bogoya, first of all, they tell you this finger must be straight. And it has to have three lines.
True.
So, my friend, do I know?
And it has to have been sprayed, this thing.
Exactly.
It has to have been... Really?
Do I decide how this finger grows and...
go and genetically engineer
exactly.
the thing. So even when they say come, it is not genuine. They will force you out with the impossible standards. So the question becomes, when will NAM become that place where they say, since those people don't want our goods and services, let us focus on these, our markets.
It's the same thing.
By the time they style up, we'll deal with them again.
It's the same thing we were talking last time. Someone was telling us that, someone I think was saying, for Uganda to be able to export coffee to some country, you should do a few things. I mean, it's to do with this anti-gas thing. And we were saying, okay, if we...
How does coffee?
Now have to do with who sleeps with who and how.
When did that become an issue?
Now,
so that stuff.
But why are we even wasting time with these guys? Do they even have the coffee themselves?
We are talking about investing in manipulating the thought processes. Because some of these NAM countries also are also busily replicating those standards.
Yes, that's true.
They are also busy erecting non-tariff barriers around the clock. In other words, the issues that affect us from further afield whether that's North America, whether that's Europe. In as far as they're also true among us, why don't we solve those ones?
Talking of them being true among us, you remember the other time we were again here on this set, and we were talking about the Uganda maize having issues in Kenya.
And Sudan?
And Sudan. And now I heard that the West Africans have also refused Kenya maize because it has a lot of aflatoxins. I'm like,
really?
No.
And the other day, a sister nation, who I think is NAM, said they are not thinking about entertaining your degrees.
No, to talk about is Nigeria, actually, which said that the degrees from Uganda are fake. Now, people know...
Are your hands clean? You who's talking?
Exactly. So, of all countries, Nigeria.
Are your hands clean? What we are saying is...
these are the issues, actually, we're laughing about them, but these are serious issues that need to be addressed now.
Because, like you said, if you know that there is an institution in Uganda that does funny things, don't spread the net to abuse others also.
Exactly.
That is fairness. Because what these colonizers have been doing all these years, they group Africa is one. Are we?
We can't be.
They say Asia is one. Really? Do the Vietnamese speak the same language as the Chinese? So that same approach is colonial. To say that because one student cheated in exams in Uganda, all the degrees from Uganda are not good. It is a colonial mentality.
But of course, like again, we said about it, we talked about it sometime, that what is good for Ugandans is also good for Kenyans. And what is good for Kenyans is also good for Ugandans.
True.
If indeed it is true that the Uganda maize has aflatoxins, it will be in the interest of Kenyans to warn Ugandans and say, look, you are eating bad food because we also don't want to eat bad food anyway. And if it is also true that there are degrees that are being manufactured from Uganda and are being taken to South Sudan or being taken to Nigeria, it will be in good interest of the Nigerians to tell the Uganda government, say, look, we have a problem. Here. Because if that is not addressed, Ugandans also don't need bad degrees from Nigeria.
Which is also true. For example, now you've recently boosted your trade links.
Yes.
You know, Uganda
We're
Airlines.
flying there.
Now, where does it end? If you're bringing this fabric, kitenge, from Nigeria on a return flight on Uganda Airlines, you refuse my degree. Because remember, for Uganda, I don't know what the statistics are now, but for Uganda, a key export has been education.
Yes.
To the region and beyond. Now, if you're breathing down on my major export, why would I want to continue taking your kitenge?
We're not even saying that Ugandans are angels, that they are not manufacturing degrees where that could be happening. But these are the issues that under the arrangements.
But even in America, there was a man who was a senator not long ago. He was thrown out of the Senate for being, or Congress, one of those, for being an impossible liar. The man lied about everything and anything,
I know,
including his qualifications. So, who now in Nigeria has said, please, America, we will not consider any of your degrees on account of the fact that you had a man in Congress who manufactured his educational record? I have not heard that one. But when you hear in Uganda, I'm telling you, it is a colonial mentality where you throw out the water with the baby, the bath water of the baby. Say, please, just throw out the water and say, the baby also has to go. Really? If we are unkind to each other, who will be kind to us?
Exactly. So I think the spirit of NAM, the spirit of African Union, the spirit of there's also that arrangement of the Afro-Asia. And the same arrangements of this now. Now we have
Latin America.
Yes, we have also the G77. Let's have something credible in all these arrangements that can push our trade, that can bolster our economies, that can be able to make arrangements that we will be able to give a platform where we shall be able to argue with the big boys on the block. Otherwise, if we are going to be still the clappers and the dancers and the voters, then we are definitely wasting a lot of precious time. No wonder when the subsequent regimes come, when the subsequent leadership come on the scene, they cannot even appreciate what the others have been doing in the past, because the history that we have accumulated over time does not have anything to go back to it.
True.
We are just going by the flow. And if we are going to remember the Nehrus and the Nassers and the others, and we have a gap of the leadership that we cannot even remember any of in terms of the relationship and the positive attitude towards NAM, towards the African Union, towards all this, then there is a problem in our leadership. And yet, we can talk of the first, the 10th American president having done ABCD, the 15th, the 40th. My friend.
That is a very key question. And I am very keen to hear how some of these things that have come from previous meetings are being handled this time around. Because we know that the last meeting was in Azerbaijan. But what are the carryovers? Are there results? It is easy to keep building new structures, but what about the old? Are there things that need to be let alone, or others that we need to be building on going forward? But more than anything else, it becomes a question of, you see, they talk about the Global South, and they say we are united by poverty, we are united by poor health systems, that we are united by security and governance issues. Now, now climate change matters, and unceasing interference in our political issues. Well. So the question becomes, that again is someone else's definition. What about if we define ourselves by the good that keeps us together? Is that such a bad thing? Why must we be spewing the same thing? By the way, that thinking is meant to keep us down. Because whenever you go to talk about the so-called North, they say now for us we are rich nations and the others. That in itself, the football people would say it's a career-threatening tackle. You played football.
Yeah.
Someone can decide to kick you in the ribs. That has nothing to do with football. You want to disable this man for good.
Exactly.
So when someone opens a discussion by saying us and them, and what defines the other people, you're not defining them by what you think is not good. They are the ones defining everyone. They tell you, for us we are rich, for us we are very educated, for us we mastered climate matters, and everything that we have mastered, for you, you're not making any progress. Now the question becomes, when shall we define ourselves?
When you look at the global north, I think we can also have that map of the global north. The now who call themselves advanced to the level that they can walk naked because they are now developed. But when you look at the global north, they have bigger problems than we do.
They don't think so.
But they will not even appreciate, they will not even talk about them. But when you look at Africans, and of course you talked about the issue of respect. This self-esteem is that even when you are going to go hungry, my grandmother used to say, you would rather sleep hungry than sleeping with the debt that you have eaten someone's food and you have to pay tomorrow. You are safer as sleeping hungry. So that Africa's dignity, we have this issue of saying, because, and I also have problems with people who are activists who say, they have done this to me because I'm an African. They have, this has happened because we are black. This has been happening because I'm a woman. This has, no, but you are. Face the reality. You know you are black, that is all, and you are. So what happens with your blackness? Can you make sense of your being black? Can you make sense of your being a woman? Can you make sense of your being who you are? That you are able to stand to the pressure, to the all this facing you. But the time you begin saying, because for us we are Africans and we cannot, and yet we cannot stand for what is African. That's a problem.
What you're saying is really very much an issue of contention. Because it's not very long ago that prominent Asian powers were treated the same way as us.
Yes.
But you see, the white man understands resources, resource buildup. He understands that. It's not very long ago that the Middle Easterners were treated like us. They thought they were laughing stock. They thought they were about manipulation. But those guys
we even
have built their social capital.
We also gave them food sometime when they were suffering.
Okay, that was then. Now, I saw the other day that Saudi was announcing they now have a significant find of gold. I don't know how big. They have found massive gold reserves.
Sometimes it can be a bluff.
Oh, well. But what we're saying is that now UAE and Qatar, look at the fleet, Qatar Airways. Look at the fleet.
The Emirates.
These are small little entities that have maximized what they have.
There are problems, actually.
Now there is nowhere in Europe where someone can say, please, Emirates, don't come. Look, they are far and away world class in every way. So this business of saying the only reason you're being stopped, look, you're broke, you don't want to improve, nobody will entertain you. If these people, and this is living memory, when these people, the people of, because Middle East is not far from here.
Exactly.
When these people have decided enough is enough, complaining will not do, let us apply ourselves.
Because no
until now, Qatar is on top of the heap of the richest people, by the richest nations by per capita income. They've done that in one generation. But for us, we are talking about the relevance of NAM. NAM can only remain relevant in as far as they tune into the needs of their members and work religiously to make sure they present themselves honorably on the global stage. For you to just say, okay, there's UN in this meeting, there's I don't know who in this meeting, and then NAM. NAM? No, this is for big brothers. It is that relevance that we are seeking.
Sure. And respect.
Yes.
But you cannot get that respect if you have not worked for it at the end of it. Because no one is going to say, now you are respected, come and sit.
And no one will give it to you either.
No one is willing, let alone giving it to you. No one is willing to give it to you.
True.
Unless you work for it for yourself. Now, how are you going to work for it yourself if in the backyard you are not even connected? Do you remember last time President Ruto was addressing the European Union, the European Parliament, and was talking about equal opportunities in trade. As soon as he leaves, they imposed more sanctions on the African trade. Now, and we have been saying
in other words, they were not listening.
Exactly. And you know, to show that this people can kill you, skin you alive, after he finishes his rhetoric. Of course, Africa, we are now doing this, we need to be we are united, we are standing ovation. But the people are like, because at the end of it, you are not achieving anything. And this is what I've been saying. That single voice is not going to make any sense into these people's ears.
Until you have results.
These good things, until so one time President told them, until you tell them go and eat something. Because being good with these people is not yielding results.
No.
If you are not going to be good to your brother.
True.
So this being good need to be reciprocated. But you are dealing with wrong people who have no manners, who have no culture, who have no religion, who have seen all this and have nothing. The only thing they have is money. So if you are going to deal with these people who only know money, then you have to be careful.
And
you don't go alone.
Together. Because if you say that this group or these nations, whether you're talking about G77 plus NAM, that they represent a number of trillions of dollars worth of economic output.
Yeah.
How are you leveraging that? You see, it's not a case of just piling the money. How do you use the money to get where you need to go?
Exactly.
And also, I think the eyes will be very sharply focused on these two big brothers. In what way will they help the cause of this arrangement? Or is it just for them? In which case, we'll be back to where we started. I think the COVID situation, the COVID-19 situation that disabled many enterprises opened quite a few eyes. Because during that time, as you know, foreign support also dwindled. Countries that gained significantly from tourism, such as Uganda, suffered disproportionately. At that time, we realized that even without capacity to build intellectual property, vaccines would continue to suffer. I'll give you a very good example. We know that China developed a number of vaccines to address that situation. We know that India is licensed to produce many of those things. Will they ever transfer know-how?
Of course not.
Okay. Then there has to be a prudence about how you deal with everybody. Because it seems everyone has something in this thing for them.
Exactly.
Except you. Because it was so bad that by now I would think that, for example, discussions around curing those kinds of emergencies would have taken a sharp turn for the better. We would be hearing right now, I'm thinking, of facilities to be developed in Nam country for vaccines. India has covered some ground in that area. Why aren't we benefiting from that know-how? This is a time for prudence. There is much ground that China has covered. Is there significant transfer of that know-how? You see, it is time out for groupings just for the sake of groupings. It must be groupings with benefits.
Sure.
And measurable ones. Such that I know that in Azerbaijan, since I was Azerbaijan, my sales to that country have gone up by 20%. As opposed to continue to pitch to new markets without making headway in the first conference.
And I think I agree with you on that. I think that's why last time we saw President Museveni heading to Vietnam. Because this is some of the unexploited markets.
True.
And they can have a lot of exchanges with us as Africans.
But I'm thinking about know-how.
Exactly, but also that shouldn't be
Why should you teach me to fish
on the individual basis.
Yes.
We should create this big basket where all can benefit.
Yes.
That I have this to bring in, you can bring in this, I can take this out, and you can take this out.
Because at the end of the day, if your neighbor has not improved in terms of income, they will not buy your stuff. They like it, but they have no way of purchasing. So it is prudence to help your neighbor prosper. It is prudence. Because it takes away the pressure of seeing that neighbor with a begging bowl every other day. You also need to rest. So because you want to rest, equip them. I am hoping those are some of the conversations they'll be having. Because we have been importing goods from one another for a long time, but that does not transform anybody's life. We need to be able to do some of these things ourselves. And I don't know whether these are our big brothers I'm talking about. I don't know whether they are just as reluctant as the others in making sure your situation changes. If it does, it is time for re-examining the arrangement.
Yeah, because if that's not going to yield, if that's not going to, at the end of it, move us closer to where we can be respected, and where we can walk with our heads up in this collaboration, say, I am an armed member, and that is respected. And if that is not going to give us that courtesy, that we can also be appreciated by others, then definitely there is need to review that relationship. Because if that is not going to happen, then we are going to continue as a norm. It cannot be even a culture, because there are certain benefits that people get from their cultures. But if we are not going to be, we are not going to benefit anyway in that arrangement, and many other arrangements, especially on the African continent, then definitely we have to reform, not only the UN,
even
but
NAM.
Many, yes, even NAM has to be reformed. But the most important thing is that we said NAM need to have structures, so that after these meetings, people go home, but people are working.
Around the clock.
Yes, to ensure that we must achieve ABCD by the next meeting. Last time we were talking here about China, that China is not a parliament that sits every other day like ours here in Kampala, but it will sit once in a year, and these people will go back to their jobs.
To perfect
but
ideals.
People are working, hands are on, and the world is moving. So I think we need to have this, especially in the arrangements of the Global South. We have a lot of, by the way, those groupings within the Global South, many of them, compared to what others have, but they are not getting results. So it is important that one of them being NAM, we have now the G77, we have all these other ones, we have the African Union and others.
And IGAD.
Yes, IGAD, all these, the West African, the South African, the blah, blah. We need to have decisions made, and we stand by those decisions and we take them seriously, so that we work together as a group. If we don't do that, we're definitely heading nowhere.
Very true.
So I thank you so much for the time I've been here. Apparently, for the viewers who have been used to Ndugu Rugarama, Ndugu Rugarama went missing, and like they say, when you see him, don't beat. But we'll be with him next week, same time, and I think we'll be here because by the time we shall have a lot of NAM activities taking place. We'll have some of the heads of governments here, and we'll also have finished with the IGAD by then, and the G77 around the corner. All of these are now fused, and we are, of course, not working, coming together, but within a same short time. We'll be here to bring you some of those highlights. We thank you for this time that you have been with us, and thank you, Rachel, for the time we have been on this set. We also thank the production team that has been behind the camera and the studios that were able to bring to you this production for today. Until next week is when we shall be back with the same production. And please, we request that you be with us again on Friday. I'm not saying you go away now, because UBC has more interesting programs coming your way. So please stay with us and don't go away. But I thank you for the time you have been with us. And thank you so much again till we meet again next week on Friday.
My name is Robert Kasande, the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs. We have put in our client charter that we need to improve the rate at which we respond to requests for opinions and legal advice. We are now achieving 14 days of receiving if the submission has all that is required. In the past, it will take probably 2 months sometimes to get a response, a final response from this ministry. We have also had good achievement in terms of the number of files that are opened by the Office of the